This is Patsy with a Z. Welcome to Joy on Paper, a program for writers and those who dream of writing. And today I have a wonderful interview. It is so exciting that I am going to be talking about a subject I like very much, sci-fi. And my guest is Paul McGrath, and we are talking about his first book in a new series called Left. So Left is the name of the book, and I am so excited to talk to you, Paul, because I love sci-fi. I love unusual stories like this, and I am a great believer that they are out there.
This one popped in from outer space, so yeah, there's stories everywhere.
I want to show people this, so I have something to show you. So you can, because we're talking about someone who has come from somewhere else, and we don't know where, but we are going to find a little bit about this, because somewhere out there is a planet called Xylodon, and there is someone who has come to Earth, and his name is Anton 7, or as he likes to be called on Earth, Roy McDonald, and he likes coffee and waffles, which is a great combination. So where do you think he lands up, everybody? This is what I love about this book, because I thought it was so funny. If you're going to look for aliens who are watching us, would you go to Mississippi? Probably not. But we think that's where he is. And you're going to have to tell us, Paul, if that is true.
Yes, he does. This is his third tour of duty. He is a veteran operative for the Xylodonian Protectorate. That's like the combo police military on the planet Xylodon. And the Xylodonians have been a little bit wary of Earth ever since the end of World War II and the two atomic blasts. And then Earth starts getting involved in space exploration, so that makes them the Xylodonians even more concerned. So they've sent secret operatives to Earth in various places. And for Anton, this is his third tour. He starts off in northeast part of the U.S., and now he is in Mississippi. And you say, why Mississippi? Mississippi is not too far from the space facilities in Huntsville, Alabama, and also at the Kennedy Space Center. And additionally, Anton is his disguise, or his role that he uses on Earth, is that of a botanist. And so Xylodon is a very dry planet, and they're very interested in how Earth conducts its water management. So that is part of what Anton and his comrades are up to. And the Mississippi River is not far away, and so is the Gulf of Mexico. There's some multiple reasons for landing in Mississippi. Plus, there's all that rural area where spaceships can land and not be detected.
And it might be true. It might be true because, you have been, let's talk a little bit about yourself, because you have been a reporter and you've worked in newspapers, and you have heard some really wild stories. So,
yes.
Yes. Let's talk for a few minutes we'll talk about how you got the idea for the book, but let's talk a little bit about your career as a reporter and some of the stories that you heard over the years and covered over the years.
I began as a cub reporter for a little town near Houston called Conroe. It was the Conroe Courier. I was a reporter there. I had basically done sports when I was in college, so I still had a fondness for sports coverage. And so I left Conroe to work on the sports desk at the Lubbock Avalanche Journal near what they call the South Plains, near the Panhandle. I then worked in a weekly newspaper in Lockhart, Texas, home of great barbecue. And if you ever want to learn the newspaper business, just work for a weekly newspaper, because you do a little bit of everything. And plus, I'm a small town boy, and Lockhart is a small town. And so that's where some of the small town flavor seeps into Left. I went back to Conroe, was managing editor of the paper there. And then I moved to the Houston Chronicle, and I worked on the news copy desk there for 37 years. So it's interesting to be on the receiving end of questions instead of the asking end. That's quite different. But as far as interesting stories, I wrote stories that ended up sending. It helped send 3 people to jail. So I was involved in some stories that obtained some justice. I, as far as strange stories, I had a woman who saw a burning cross floating in the sky near her house. And then did a story on some ladies who said they were being chased by UFOs. And that was all in the Conroe area. So you get all types.
So, did you investigate those UFO sightings?
Yes, we did. You talk to the usual authorities. These ladies said they saw black helicopters and strange lights in the sky. And so you would talk to the usual authorities and you get the typical denials. It's a little bit of X-Files. But these ladies eventually filed some kind of as I recall, they were filed a lawsuit because they said one of their daughters was affected by the radiation. So I never found out how the lawsuit turned out.
With a few months ago, we had all of these things
The
flying around,
drones.
all these drones,
Yeah,
and maybe we don't know. It could be true.
correct.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's talk. I'm going to tell everybody first. Can you translate the opening of your book? Because I have it right here. But
that was the fun. That was the sort of the Tolkien-esque of challenge that I had to create a language, and I use the word nimules a lot, and it's basically it's a kind way of saying you idiot.
I thought that was good. I knew I was going to book the minute that's. So tell us about how you got the idea to write the book and just some of the characters, and particularly, of course, Anton 7.
I had to confess that my wife had been pushing me to write for years and years and years. I'd done some dabbling. I'd been a reporter, and when I was at the Chronicle, I had written some various pieces. And my wife was always a fan of my writing style and said, "You need to sit down and write a book." And I just kept putting her off. And I teach a journalism class on the side, so I could always say, I've got grading to do. I always had a good excuse not to write. Then something happened in Texas that really affected me. And that was the school shooting in Uvalde. And I've been involved covering as a wire editor school shootings and other tragedies, shuttle explosions. But this one just really hit me. And I guess what really bothered me was the reaction afterward or non-reaction. And it's, man, it seems like reasonable adults could come up with a better solution than just thoughts and prayers. And you keep hearing this meme of a good guy with a gun can stop a bad guy with a gun. Here's the case where 30 or more good guys with guns were too afraid to take action against a bad guy who had a bigger gun. And this just stuck with me. And then I guess it just came to me one night, says, what if somebody with a little more power, a little more technology came up with a way to take some action on this? And so that's where it came from. And things that sort of the plot sort of springs up around Anton as the person who, he's in Mississippi and he befriends a gentleman named Ezra Gator Hopkins. Ezra is a Navy veteran, World War II Navy veteran, and he is a salty soul with lots of sea tales. And he becomes a father figure to Anton. And it's through his affinity for Ezra, that in friendship with Ezra, that Anton's empathy for mankind grows. Eventually, a tragedy occurs, and Anton is so affected. Why can't humans deal with this situation? And so he decides to take some action himself. Ezra along the way, he has acquainted Anton with a local school teacher named Ellie Atkinson, and they develop a relationship. Those are the key characters. Then there is another narrative soul who, in the shadows of the plot, named Johnny Barnes Jr. Johnny Barnes Jr. is a high school dropout, just an all-around lout, peeping Tom, just a scummy individual. But Johnny Barnes Jr. He this my left is now a trilogy, and Johnny Barnes plays a role in each of the books, and it gets a little his role gets a little more important as the books proceed.
I love all the details that you have in the book that make Mississippi come alive. We go on a tour. I love that you have coffee. I thought that was because as somebody who drinks 5 or 6 cups of coffee a day, I love coffee. And so I can see easily that an alien would come here and fall in love with coffee and not want to go back. That's for me, that's exactly how I feel.
As you find out eventually, it's coffee become it's it coffee symbolizes why the Xylodonians think mankind is not a complete loss. Look, they can do some good things. They've got coffee.
You have the waffle barn. You have the waffle barn, and I love the waffle barn. That's a great place.
Coffee becomes a smuggling item in one of the later books. So that's how much they like it.
That's it.
Smuggling in.
So you had fun touring Nashville.
Yes, my stepson attended Ole Miss, and so my wife and I had gone through, visited him several times, and so I was familiar with that I-55 corridor, and just, man, there's a lot of empty space here. There's good places for spaceships to land. And for a cool first date, Ellie taking Anton to Nashville and seeing the Elvis's house and St. Jude's and the barbecue place and the Civil Rights Museum. There were just all these kind of cool things for them to do. And it also helps Anton learn a little bit more about humankind.
Exactly. I loved it. I love that that you included that because it, in a way, you have deep sort of philosophical little tidbits throughout the book. But I'm sure years of thinking about the news, just covering the news. So you take us to Washington D.C. and back discovering the conversations going on back there. So you had all this kind of experience. So you throw all of that in, but then you have other things that just make the story move and flow. Everybody will like Ellie. I think she's great. And
Ellie is she's something else, and she gets better as you move along. Ellie, don't tell my wife this, but Ellie is very much somewhat like my wife. She will get on a soapbox and just go, and so some of that is in Ellie. But one thing that's just crazy about our society is in the U.S. we actually have a definition for what a mass shooting or a mass killing is. You got to shoot or kill 4 people. I think in some places it's 5. So if you only kill 3 people, you don't make the list. Sorry, partner, you're short. So wow, that's just a weird thing to wrap your head around. And of course, that's what I have Anton do. And it seems like that's what sends him to Washington. And he decides to make a big splash and do what he thinks might solve the problem, at least for a little while.
I like books like this where you go into a subject that basically helps if people can talk about it and think about it. And
right.
And yet you have all the other things around the story, including a dog. You have to have a dog. So tell us, are you the kind who plotted it all out, or did it come to you sort of flowing like a cup of coffee?
Let me see if I can address all of that, because I like what you said at the beginning. Like I tried to make the book I didn't want it to be an anti-gun book. I was trying to make a what if or something to think about kind of book. What if this happened? So if this event occurred, then what would happen afterward? So that was something I had in mind. I did an outline, but I tell you, Patsy, I don't know where the inspiration, where the light beam came from, but after my semester was done in fall semester, December 2023, I sat down and I worked like 5, 6, 7 hours a day. And before the spring semester began, I basically banged out the book left. Now I did make some polishing, did some polishing and editing and whatever later, but it was about 90+% done before I began classes. I guess one of the biggest hurdles I had was being a longtime journalist, and you're always taught to write short. I was taking 60-inch New York Times stories and cutting them down to 20 inches to fit in the Houston Chronicle. And so when I got up to 38,000 words and had never written a novel before, I thought that was a lot. And then I asked somebody about that and said, oh, that sounds like a novelette. So I kept working on it, and it got up to 55,000 words. Books 2 and 3 are both in the 75,000 word range. So I found some more things to talk about. As for Gator, the little dog, I don't know if you noticed that he, in the tragedy that sets Anton onto his path, 6 people die. And when Anton finds Gator abandoned in a paper bag in the woods, 6 puppies are dead. So the number 6 kind of plays a recurring role in the book. Anton saves Gator and nurses him back to health. And I guess it's through this little dog that the space alien develops even more affinity for not humankind, but Earth creatures. Yeah, he falls in love with the dog. I hope I answered all your questions there.
Although you're not bringing in a lot about the planet, you still have many points that make it feel real. Like we could actually, who knows, Elon Musk will send us all to Xylodon.
That was one of the things that I did deliberately, was not very definitively describe the Xylodonians in detail. I wanted, for some reason, where the idea came to me, I'm not sure, but I said, I'm going to let the reader decide. I'm going to let the reader in their mind's eye, decide what the Xylodonians look like. I just basically said they're humanoid in such and such height. They have shape-shifting abilities.
So
what does it matter?
Who knows? Yes. And Anton 7?
And by the way, there is an Elon Musk type character who gets into book 3.
Oh,
just saying.
Oh, just saying. Okay. You already have a Tesla in this book.
Yes, that was before they became on the most hated list. That's when Teslas were still, that's what happens when news moves too fast.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know. You put something in. But on the other hand, the idea, I think more people believe that there are Xylodonians here. And you wonder what they're thinking about us, really. That's why the book, I think, it's funny to say a sci-fi book is relevant, but it is relevant. This one is relevant because it's something people are thinking about. How are we behaving for real space aliens to come here? And what are they thinking about us? And should we start like acting a little better?
And as you find out as you go along through the books, that Xylodon has its dark, violent past, but it got all past that. It evolved. And so they're just raising eyebrows at some of the things that we do.
Because it is really, when you think about it, it is so strange that it is 2025. And we could have a peaceful world.
Oh, yeah, easy.
Really, it's also, you feel like it's also stupid. And coming from another planet, you imagine that they're saying, why are you so stupid? You have this beautiful planet. You have all of these things that you can do. You can do so many wonderful, beautiful things. Your land is beautiful. The people are capable of doing so much. Why are you still back and fighting things from...
Oh, yeah. The Xylodonians are real. Man, you have all this water. We would love to have half the water that you have. You pollute it, and yeah, they shake their heads at us quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's a relevant sci-fi book. Because a lot of sci-fi books, you have to go to the planet and find out all the problems there. But here, we have to look at our own problems and say, world peace is not that difficult. It really isn't. You just have to stop fighting. Duh. Get over it and get
Right.
over some of these things. Fine, we were enemies with this country, but it's like what happened with the United States and Japan. We were enemies.
Yeah. Now we're best of friends.
Best of friends. So it's so silly. All of it. If you look anywhere in the world, all of this fighting is ridiculous. All of the money that's wasted. And I think that's one thing people will come away thinking about this book. Not just the guns that we buy that are ridiculous, but it's the weapons of war that we have all over the world.
Correct.
Why don't we send plows? Why don't we use all this money to, instead of making all these weapons, make beautiful bridges, make beautiful cities, make beautiful. It's senseless.
Absolutely. Yes. I can't agree more. The last I looked, there were United States is around 330 million plus people. There's a like amount of guns out there. There's a gun plus for every American, and it's like, how does that? And I'm a gun owner. I'm not anti-gun. But
No,
I
I
certainly
agree.
don't need an AR-15 to go hunt Bambi.
I grew up in northern Michigan, so you have guns, and it's
Yeah,
not the gun itself. In the end, it's the people, and it's the attitude that people
sure,
have.
sure.
And if people would get over their anti this, anti that, why? It's so silly. If you look at it logically from a planetary point of view of intelligent life out there, where we hope there is, and they're looking at us and they're saying, why don't you get over these little petty problems and just make a beautiful world? Because we have it. We have everything here.
I've taught on 3 different campuses, and it is so odd to me that when I go into a classroom, I now look and say, okay, where are the paths of escape just in case? How can I protect them if such and such happens? And so instead of concentrating on teaching my lesson, that's one thing I have to keep in mind. Not often, I don't perseverate on it, but it's something I've had to think about from time to time.
So going back to the writing process, as a journalist, you have this specific style of writing, and you don't do a lot of dialogue, and you don't do a lot of description. You give the facts and the where and the when. So how did you find that as you're writing this? Did you have to go back and say, I have to describe this better? Or did you find yourself using newspaper terms that you had to cut out?
There's parts of the book that you can see where the research comes in. That's where the journalist plays a part. I go through some of the stuff about gun violence in America, and I also talk about the types of trees that are in Mississippi for Anton the botanist. They live in a town called Eudora, which is named after Eudora Welty. So I did a little research there, but a lot of the plot comes through the dialogue between Anton and Ezra, Anton and Ellie. And that was also a way I could interject some humor into the book, because I'm a kind of a professional smart aleck, and so I could throw some of that in there. I was also able to use some. Anton is educating himself on humankind by watching TV. And so there's a lot of pop culture references I can throw in, some of which Anton doesn't understand so well. So that's a way you could add some humor. So there were those were things that I did deliberately. Now, some of the pop culture references I started worrying about is, gee, are these only references that will be recognized by people in my age group? Because I have to tell you, Patsy, I have a student one time who asked me who Ringo Starr was. And I was like, oh boy. So
That's bad. That's bad. That makes you feel weird.
My students are all born after 9/11. So to them, 9/11 is ancient history. For us, it's not that long ago.
And it's so funny. And they'd never heard of a Yellow Pages.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing. No concept of the Yellow Pages. What would you do with it?
My son-in-law didn't know how to use a dial phone.
It's so funny. Yeah, no, and I like the reference to Danny Thomas and St. Jude.
St. Jude, yeah.
One of the things that I do whenever I have an author, a children's author on my program, I always suggest to them that they donate books to St. Jude's Hospital. Children in hospital need books, especially
Sure.
since the pandemic. Before the pandemic, they used to have little book carts that would go around to the rooms. But after the pandemic, they stopped that. So I encourage everybody who's listening, if you just want to, one day you say, I want to do something nice, just get on Amazon and send a book to any hospital in your area or St. Jude's or Shriners.
And isn't it so strange that we have folks who want to ban books but not assault weapons? Wrap your head around that. That's something that Ellie would come up with and say.
Yeah, I was
So.
going to say that. And you dedicated the book actually to your mother, and who had you read.
She shoved books right in my hand. Yep.
And they just did a survey, and they found out that something like 40% of the young parents in the United States do not read to their children.
Wow.
My whole childhood was my mother reading to us every single night. It's funny, I keep this book next to me. This one is right on my table because this is a kid's book, and I read it. Oh, I read it every night for many years. And so I still sometimes read it because it brings such fond memories. Young parents don't understand that. Just read a book, because what you need and what all writers need, we need readers. So what's your experience fiction-wise? What books influenced your life? As a journalist, you read lots of nonfiction, but for fiction, where did you turn?
I love history, and so a lot of my reading was of various and sundry histories, but I also liked fiction. I liked, when I was young, really young, I guess Ray Bradbury appealed to me, and then a little bit later Vonnegut, and then I became a Frank Herbert and Dune series fan, and of course Tolkien. God, I put off The Hobbit until I was, geez, why did I wait until college to read The Hobbit? And so then I consumed the whole series. There was just like I said, it was a mixture, and I just loved good stories. And you get to be, from the editing side, you appreciate good writing, and I'd see a great turn of phrase or some foreshadowing or something like that, and I said, God, these guys really know how to use the language and use the tools. And I said, man, I hope I can do that someday.
And a lot of it, I'm sure, came back when you started writing a novel.
Tried.
You have all of this in the back of your mind when you start writing. And of course, it's nice when you didn't have to use a grammar program. I recognize almost immediately now if a book has been put through the mill.
I have to tell you, Patsy, I go through 50-something years of my life of eliminating the Oxford comma because we use the Associated Press style in newspapers. And so you get rid of the Oxford comma. My publisher at Stony Creek Publishing, Paul, you got to use the Oxford comma. That's just the way he talks. Paul, you got to use the Oxford comma. So I'm like physically resisting, but I had to go and put that in there. Yeah, that was different.
It's funny. I think you've done a wonderful, you've written a book that's fun to read, that has depth, wonderful characters. I can see easily. You're on the second book. You've finished the second book?
The second book is in the pipeline. It's with my publisher at Stony Creek. He actually has book number 3. I was between books 2 and 3, I was going to write a memoir of my journalistic career, because I had a lot of little fun, weird incidents happen to me, as some of them I were just related to you. But then my publisher says, this is better as a trilogy. Okay, so I put the memoir down and worked on book 3. And in book 3 borrows from the headlines too. The bad guys are Russian hackers. So we hear a lot about them these days.
Exactly. It's lovely to be able to put it all together, come out with something that's creative, that I think people will enjoy. The characters are great, really great.
Thank you.
People will enjoy reading the story. You make it fun, and that's important. And it was
fun for me to do.
Yeah, and it's fun for you to do because this is a great thing to do. And the oldest guest on my radio program, she was on my program for her 100th birthday.
Wow.
And she had just written a book about cybercrime. And she had done 2 years of
Wow.
research on cybercrime to write that book at the age of 100. And
Wow.
she is, and she's still alive. She's absolutely brilliant. And what is great is that she's still writing. she's,
Excellent.
you know,
Excellent.
and so you have a lot of years and a lot of books to come. And having found this fun, this, and you've always had the joy of writing, but now you have the joy of writing a book.
There
And
you go.
and also you'll get, once you start to go out there and meet people, do book signings and that kind of thing, that also, it's, you need that kind of thing. It just makes
Yeah,
you
it's
feel
always
good.
good to meet other people who appreciate books.
Exactly. And books can help them think about a subject, but they can also just give them some time away from whatever else is going on in the world,
Exactly.
because you need that escape. You need to escape without getting too angsty. You don't want to, you can't read too
Correct.
many, you can't read Albert Camus every day. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
You've done a wonderful job with Left. I think it's really
Thank
great.
you.
It's just fun.
And the title is a double meaning. He's left behind in Mississippi by his friends, and as as you can tell from our discussion, there are some left of center philosophies and ideas that come into play. So yeah, that was intentional.
But
It's
it's,
not ideological.
no, and I want to make sure that people don't think so, because, and it's like what we said, just everybody, just really, we have to look at everybody's point of view, understand their point of view, and be a little forgiving if we need, or be a little accepting, but have fun along the way. I think
Yeah.
you've accomplished that. And as a author of a novel, it must have been fun to see that word on your book. Novel, a
It's nice
novel.
to have that in my resume now.
Yeah, doesn't that sound good? I think you're really great, and I know that you're on Facebook. Can I assume that you're an Aggie?
Oh yeah, Texas A&M class of 1978.
Okay, okay.
Still
I thought.
teaching a class there.
Have you gone to any of your class reunions?
Not my college ones. High school I have, but the college ones always seem to fall on a date that I've had a conflict.
Now, when you go to your next, the main character in Andrew Grant's series, and he writes the Reacher books now. He's
Okay.
Lee
Okay.
Lee Child's brother, and he's writing the Reacher books. But his
The
main
Jack
character,
Reacher books. Okay.
so it's Paul McGrath. So,
Interesting. Hey,
you know,
Patsy, I was surprised one day, and I picked up a Chicago Tribune, and there was a byline that said Paul McGrath. Apparently, there was a Paul McGrath who worked for the Trib. No relation, but there it was.
thank you again so much for joining me today. And
You're
everybody,
quite
get this
welcome.
book. You'll love it. It's just a perfect little summer read. You'd pick it up. It's just the right length and lots of interesting things in there. So, again, Paul, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're quite welcome.
Okay, thank you now. Bye bye. Wow, that was so much fun to talk to Paul McGrath about his book, Left. It's funny, it's interesting, and I think you will enjoy it. It is available on Amazon and wherever books are sold. So please get his book, and meanwhile, please subscribe to Joy on Paper Live so that I can bring you more interviews with interesting and fascinating authors. And who knows, you might be inspired to write your own book. So please just click that button, comment, and share, and especially comment, because authors really appreciate getting comments. Thank you so much for watching today, and please find the joy on paper. Read a good book and start with this wonderful book. It'll put a smile on your face, because you never know. They might be out there, and they might be hiding in Mississippi. So maybe you better start thinking about it. What are they going to see? What are they going to think about us? Oh, gosh. I hate to think of what they're going to think about us. So please get this book. Bye bye now. Bye.